Hello, Siddharth, and hello, Mr. Duke Mallya. How are you doing?
Hi, we're both good, thank you.
So, well, I have this here, if I'm honest, and in Siddharth's world is a little Mr. Duke here who's the inspiration behind it, right?
He definitely was a big help in the writing process, yes.
I totally agree with that. Dogs are the best therapy. But, Siddharth, I'll be honest with you. We used to do this whole show called Night Out. And I still remember my first images of you are, Sidhartha Mallya at the party, Sidhartha Mallya, on a fancy yacht. And then when I read this book, it's just a different perception of the Sidhartha Mallya I thought that we all knew. So, if I would ask you, the first question is, which was the biggest perception about yourself that you wanted to break? Because people often see, the lives of the rich and famous as being just perfect, not realizing it's far from perfect.
Yeah, I didn't set out to write this book. He wants to run away now, so he's going to go. I didn't set out to write this book with the purpose of changing my perspective. That was not what this book was about. I think the important thing to know is that, and you're quite right, I think that, it's not a surprise that you have that image of me, right? I think, though, as a society, we can very quickly brand people based on what we see without taking into consideration that people change over time and people evolve, and flexibility is very important. And, what you're mentioning and what you're also talking about is over 10 years ago as well. And 10 years is a long time. And I think so, in general, I think literally, like, if there's a cliche that's more apt, is don't judge a book by its cover, right? Which is also accept that people change, people evolve, and people grow. And coming specifically to the book, I think it's also, there's a big section in it that I tried to say that from the outside point of view, or what people might know of me, maybe because of my last name or family or whatever, that, okay, well, this guy has come from wealth, therefore, how could he ever suffer from mental health? And the point that I want to get across is that at the end of the day, whether you are Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, American, Indian, Chinese, South African, male, female, 50 years old, 40 years old, 20 years old, rich, poor, whatever it may be, no one is immune to suffering from issues of mental health. And that's something that we really need to start respecting, because it can get quite dangerous otherwise to have such limited views on this topic.
I totally agree. And what I really liked about the book was, when I started reading it, was you making light of something really heavy. I kind of liked your sense of humor that came across, and the obvious question also, was it cathartic to put pen to paper?
No, it's funny. I get asked that a lot. It was not. It was actually quite painful to do, more than I probably anticipated. Obviously this book is a culmination of years worth of work. It's not like it just one fine day I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm in a position to write a book. It's years worth of self-work. So a lot of the stuff I worked through to be able to get to a level that I could talk about it in a book. And of course I did my Consider This series on Instagram, where I talked about a few of these issues. So it wasn't alien to me. So I thought that, yeah, it's just going to be no different to doing those again. But I don't know if it's something about writing it or seeing it on a page, or knowing that it was going to go out there, and kind of like, if you like it, like a book, it's like, videos online or whatever, you can take them down if something happens. This is kind of like immortalized, it's out there sort of thing. And I don't know if that added to it, but it definitely was painful to revisit all of this stuff. And it was probably because, as you've read it, it's not that I just talk about what happened to me. I also try and look from an empathetic point of view to the other people who were involved in different capacities, of why they may have acted the way they did and what like that. And I think that can be quite hard. It's a beautiful thing to do, I think, to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but it's it also does then take a lot of deep reflection.
I totally get that, Sidhartha. And the fact that you spoke very candidly about your parents' split and, suddenly realizing that your father had another family. I know you've spoken about OCD and about your own thing, but what I think I felt for the lonely, as they would say, the lonely little rich boy was the fact that, where you've written that you came back home and, your half sister, stepsister had drawn a perfect family and you weren't there. That kind of, touched me there. I was like, oh, poor thing, So, I mean, it's just amazing that you actually had the courage to write about this. And there are people involved. There's your mom, there's your dad, there are your half sister, step siblings, everybody involved there.
Yeah, I think I decided, when I decided that I wanted to write, I was like, there's no point doing this if you're going to be half-hearted. Like, you either go in 100% or don't do it at all, is what I told myself. And, it was never going to be a case of not doing it. And it's just, the thing that got me through writing this is knowing that by admitting these things, right, you unwittingly, I might be able to help other kids who went through divorce as well now look back and be like, oh my God, I wasn't the only one. And I think being armed with that knowledge that this book has the power to potentially help people feel less alone, made the whole endeavor, that much, I say, quote unquote, easier. And coming to mentioning my parents and people like that, I haven't mentioned anyone in this book unless it's pertained to the actual event that has had a mental effect on me that I've spoken about. And I was adamant to myself. I was like, and this book shouldn't be an angry rant, because it could easily have turned into like a screw you to all these people who did this, this, and this to me. And I was like, that's not what this is. That's not what's going to be helpful to anyone. And that was something I was very mindful about, is that if I'm going to include people in it, it has to be done in a way where I'm explaining why they were involved and how I actually see it from their point of view.
Totally. And also the fact that you spoke about what happened to your dad later and his case to the government of India. That was a time, you were somebody who always made headlines for his way of life. And then on the other hand, you make good headlines, you make bad headlines. You've had your share of trolling around the time when you were battling your own, depression, mental health issues. That must have been an extremely trying time. And to come out of it the way you have is a show of strength, I would say.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. And I think that, I do say this, like, I do say it's not like, friends of mine have said that, like, oh my gosh, you're so strong, you deal with everything in a strong way. And what I remind, I'm like, look, it's sweet you say that, but I'm no superhero. I'm nothing special. I just did the work, and it's work that's available to everyone to do. It's just that a lot of people don't want to take that introspection right into themselves. And had I not gone to drama school, had I not done this, I might have dealt with this situation very differently. But I felt like the best way to deal with it was to really deal with it head on. And, I think I've learned a lot over the last 5-6 years in regard to my dad's situation, in that, I've seen some very, very, very good times in my life. I've been very fortunate and blessed. But I've also seen times where it seems like you're sort of completely against the wall and everyone's against you, and so it's definitely given me a way to look at both sides.
And since you have been on both sides, I actually want to, if people judge, as you said, never judge a book by its cover. People have this perception about the rich and famous people who are in the spotlight. Also the trial by fire. We have been seeing a lot of cases coming up, where children of the rich and famous get docked for something they have done, and then the father gets called, or if the father's done, the child gets called. What would you actually want to tell people out there? Because it's very easy for the media and the others to, because I sometimes get messages, okay, what's the gossip? I wouldn't know the gossip, it's just what you're seeing unfolding around you. What would you actually like to say? Because somebody who has been on that side and has experienced it all.
It's a hard one, and it's a hard thing to say, because I think, as I write in the book, everyone's entitled to an opinion, And I think, in fact, that's what made the world go around. I think we should have differing opinions, but we must also be open to debate and to talk in a constructive way. You have a different opinion, I have a different opinion. Okay, let me hear why you have your opinion, you hear where mine is. We don't have to agree, but that's where discourse comes in. I think the problem today is with the likes of social media and all of that, where people are able to get their opinion across by the click of a button. The diligence going into forming the opinion has been lost. So people are quick to just jump to conclusions without wanting to have a discussion about it. And I would just say to anyone, I would say, look, you don't have to like anyone. You can think anything of anyone, but do some research and come to your own formulated opinion, not just based on what someone's telling you, right?
And also talk about mental health. Now, it is, especially in the pandemic, people have realized, earlier, many have spoken about it. And there's nothing wrong. Everyone should seek help, because I openly say I have anxiety. Something just might trigger that anxiety and that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. And as you've also said in your book, it's saying that, oh, it's okay, it shall pass is not enough, because the person who's going through knows it won't pass as easily. That stigma, I think, is being removed a bit, and people are openly speaking about it. What do you really feel should be done? I mean, going forward, it's not a disease, it's just a chemical imbalance that can be resolved. I mean, we cannot be looking down upon people who have anxiety, OCD, depression, whatever.
Well, we just need to change the narrative around it, I think, right? And I think it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take years, but it's going to take conversations like we're having now, and more of these conversations by more people to shine a light on it. And, I've said this a lot now, and I should have written this in the book, but I love it how India, we are the motherland of well-being and spirituality. The motherland of it. You have people from the West flocking to India to find themselves, right? Yet as Indians, if we want to talk about mental well-being, forget it. Like it's a taboo subject. And it's like, and I'm like, you know what? Spirituality, mental well-being, it's called mind, body, soul for a reason. Don't forget the word mind in it. And, we'll go into all of these Ayurvedic treatments for the body and Kerala and all this sort of stuff, which is great. We'll go and do yoga and all of these practices for the soul. But if you want to talk about something with the mind, no. And it's bizarre that it's not looked at as part of the body.
True. And coming to other aspects, since I liked the way you've written the narrative, because, I was smiling along, and there were moments when I laughed when you've spoken about Sid bar in your hotel, in your hotel room. Yeah. Stuff like that. I was like, what is this kid thinking? And then you said, not a good idea. And then about acting classes, how drama classes were also therapeutic. Did you ever think, looking back, maybe instead of an actor, you could actually make a great screenplay writer?
I don't know about that. I don't know how good I'd be at writing dialogue. Maybe this could be adapted into something quite nice, but we'll see. I think it's one of those things that nowadays, you know how it is, like in any form of entertainment, you've got to wear multiple hats. You can't just really, the days of just being one thing are done. I mean, you see a lot of the Bollywood actors in the West are all producers now as well. Some of them do directing, some of them write. So I think there's definitely opportunity and scope to do different things. Screenplays, I don't know. I've written a few short things, nothing long. But then again, this time last year, I'd never written a book before. So you never say never.
Absolutely. So where's the acting career? What about that? I know you've hosted shows.
So. Yeah, I've hosted shows for your network as well. For Good Times. In fact, a couple of things. I was looking back on that. It's funny, obviously doing the calendar girl hosting in 2012, I think that was. And then I also did something, you used to have this NDTV corporate challenge thing.
Yes, you did.
And I hosted that one year.
Yep.
And that was so funny. I'll just give you a quick little anecdote before I get back on time. I remember doing that, and it was like, all these big corporations send these teams to go and do these challenges. And then at night there was like a party. And you give a free bar to a bunch of corporates who are on a retreat. It's like no one's ever seen alcohol before. It was great. It was so funny to see. But like, it's funny because I look back on that stage in my life and like what I was doing, like hosting the calendar and all of this. And I'm like, wow, that's so far removed from where I am today. But I feel like I had to go through that experience to be able to be where I am today. Sorry, coming to the acting stuff. Things are going. There were a couple of things that would have gone, but then of course the pandemic hit. So I'm hoping that they kind of crank back up. But I'm also quite wary about talking about things because I've had so many opportunities in the last like 5 years where it's been like, yes. And it's got down to kind of like the 11th hour and for whatever reason it's fallen apart. So I'm cautious now about saying too much.
Anyways, fingers crossed for that. And any advice you would want to tell the teens reading your book in the hostel who was like, wow, man, Sid's life is the life that we should be leading. I really like that, the parties and everything. But what would you actually want to tell the kids?
I just want to tell the kids to embrace your truth and embrace who you are. And just remember, it's not weak. It's not weakness to admit that you're vulnerable, to admit that you need help. I mean, these are legitimate things. And I would like the kids of today to start normalizing this conversation more and to start talking about their feelings, start talking about what they're going through. So their generation and the next generation, we all have a part to play, right? We all have a part to play to ensure that this also has a light shone on it. And I would say one last thing to the kids is, because I used to get like this, if you ever feel that your parents or grandparents or whatever don't understand your mental health issues, you can get very disheartened very quickly and also very irritated. But I think it's also worth remembering that in that generation, this didn't exist. Conversations around this didn't exist. So my parents' generation, grandparents' generation, it's not that they don't care about mental health. It was just not anything. It wasn't a subject that they needed to, even me when I was at school, it wasn't something that we had to talk about. So, I think it's don't get disheartened if people perhaps seem like they're being dismissive of you. A lot of the time it's not dismissive, it's just they don't know enough about it.
I totally agree. And has anybody from the family read the book and what did they say?
My mum's read it. My mum's reading it. She likes it a lot.
Yes,
which is nice. And she's proud that I wrote it and that she knows that it can help people. So that's great.
And I like the way, the chapters, Sid the Kid, Lose the Booze, OCD and Me, Built on Guilt. I really like the way you have, the chapters, the titles are catchy. And well, I would ask people to read it because I like the way you've written it, because it makes you realize and introspect, but it also makes you smile. So anyways, more power to you, Sid. And it just might get adapted.
Who knows? Maybe.
Anyways, all the very best. And I know it's evening at your end. So good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.